What if I told you that victory is often more dangerous than defeat? Not just for the ones who lose, but for the ones who win. When we hear about ancient Rome, we think of discipline, honor, armor shining in the sun, and soldiers marching with pride. We imagine strength, order, civilization. But there is another side of Roman victory that history rarely talks about. A side that made even some Roman thinkers uncomfortable. A side that forces us to ask a hard question about human nature. What really happens to morality when power has no limits? Imagine this scene. A city has fallen. The walls are broken. The soldiers have won. The cheering is loud. The war is over. And now, there are no rules left. In ancient times, victory did not mean peace. It meant permission. Permission to take. Permission to dominate. Permission to decide who remains human and who does not. For the people inside defeated cities, especially women and children, victory was often the beginning of a new nightmare, not because they had done something wrong, but because they were powerless. Roman history records this calmly, almost coldly. Captured people were treated as spoils of war, property, objects to be divided, sold or used. This was not hidden. It was normal. And that is what makes it terrifying. Because when cruelty becomes normal, people stop seeing it as cruelty. Let me tell you something important. This story is not about blaming one civilization. Rome was not unique. Many ancient societies acted the same way. This is a story about power and what it does to the human mind. The Stoic philosophers lived inside this world. They saw it with their own eyes, and some of them quietly warned against it. The first hard truth is this: when people win completely, empathy often disappears. A Roman soldier who survived months of fear, hunger, and death did not return home as a calm hero. He returned hardened, angry, empty. Victory gave him status, rewards, and authority. And with authority came the belief that he deserved compensation for his suffering. That belief is dangerous, because once a person believes they deserve reward at any cost, other humans become tools. Captured civilians were no longer seen as mothers, daughters, or people with stories. They were labeled with one word: captives. And once someone is reduced to a label, conscience grows quiet. Modern psychology shows the same thing. In stressful environments, people divide the world into us and them. The them lose their faces. Their pain feels distant. The Romans did not invent this. They simply lived it openly. The second truth is even darker. Systems can turn cruelty into duty. Roman law allowed soldiers and commanders wide freedom after victory. Enslavement was legal. Families were separated. Lives were decided by rank and profit. This was not chaos. It was organized. That is what makes it chilling. When cruelty is written into law, good people can do terrible things while believing they are just doing their job. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, ruled this empire. He never denied its brutality, but he constantly reminded himself of something important. That power tests character more than suffering does. In his private journal, he wrote reminders to himself to stay gentle, even when others were cruel, to remember that all humans share the same fragile nature. Why would an emperor need to remind himself of this? Because when everyone bows to you, when no one can stop you, the temptation to forget humanity is enormous. The third truth is this: war rewards the worst instincts when discipline is lost. Roman soldiers were trained to obey orders strictly, but after victory, discipline often loosened. Commanders looked away. Excesses were ignored. Why? Because punishment would slow celebration. Because everyone wanted to feel compensated. Because the system quietly accepted it. This is not ancient history. It is human history. Whenever authority stops watching, behavior changes. Stoicism teaches something radical here. It says that self-control matters most when no one is watching. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who was once enslaved himself, said that true freedom is not external. It is the ability to control your own actions, even under pressure. Think about that. A man in chains taught that freedom lives inside the mind, and many men with swords were slaves to their impulses. The fourth truth is painful. The innocent always pay the price for ambition. Women and children in conquered cities had no armies, no votes, no protection. They suffered not because they fought, but because they existed in the wrong place at the wrong time. History often celebrates generals. It rarely remembers the quiet suffering that followed them. Stoicism does not ask us to glorify this past. It asks us to learn from it. Seneca, another Stoic thinker, warned that violence degrades both the victim and the one who commits it. He believed cruelty damages the soul, not symbolically, literally. A person who becomes comfortable with suffering loses something inside that never fully returns. And Rome eventually paid that price. As the empire expanded, compassion shrank, greed grew, internal decay followed. What began as strength ended as collapse. The fifth truth brings this story back to us. You don't need a battlefield to see this pattern. You see it in offices where power is abused, in relationships where one person controls another, online where anonymity removes empathy. Whenever someone feels untouchable, kindness becomes optional. Stoicism exists to fight that instinct. It teaches that strength is restraint, that real power is self-mastery, that victory over others means nothing if you lose control over yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to become like the one who harmed you. In other words, don't let power turn you into what you hate. This is why these stories matter, not to shock you, not to glorify violence, but to warn you, because human nature has not changed. Technology has improved, armor has changed, laws have evolved, but the temptation of power remains the same. The lesson of Rome is simple and uncomfortable. Evil does not always come from monsters. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who are rewarded for stopping their conscience. Stoicism asks you to live differently, to stay aware when you win, to stay humble when you rise, to protect your character when no one forces you to. Because the real test of a person is not how they suffer. It is how they act when they are allowed to do anything. If this story made you think, don't ignore that feeling. Like the video if you value honest history. Subscribe if you want calm strength in a chaotic world. And comment below with one lesson you think modern society still hasn't learned. Because wisdom only survives when we choose to remember it.